All right, so far in this lesson, we've been looking at finding local maxes and local mins. It involves finding the critical numbers and then testing them, classifying them. Now, it happens where we're going along and we find only one critical number. And so something special happens if we only find one critical number. It's not just a local min, or it's not just a local max. What's happening is we're actually finding the absolute min or the absolute max for our function on that interval. So let's read through this result. On the interval from a to b, if a continuous function has only one critical number and it's a local min or a max, then it automatically is also the absolute min or the absolute max for the function on that interval. So one critical number tells us a little bit more information about our function. So remember, we've seen how to handle if our function is continuous. So this is a key thing here. Our function needs to be continuous for this result to apply. And we've looked at the case where if we had a continuous function and it was defined on a closed interval from a to b, well, we saw that our function in that case, if our function is continuous and it's defined on a closed interval, our function is guaranteed to have both an absolute max and absolute min. And our work there was with the closed interval method. So using the closed interval method, we could test the function at the endpoints, find the critical numbers, test the function at the critical numbers, and then just go through and essentially the test is just plug the numbers into the original function and see which one gives you the largest and which one gives you the smallest value, and that's your absolute max and absolute min. So if our function's continuous, defined on a closed interval, we're guaranteed to have both an absolute max and absolute min, and we've seen how to actually locate those. It was the closed interval method. Now, that closed interval method only really applied if these two conditions both were met. The function was continuous. If the function wasn't continuous, all bets are off. We don't know if our function is going to have an absolute max or min. Might not. If the interval wasn't closed, so if we didn't include the endpoints, then also it might not have a max, absolute max. It might not have an absolute min. We're only guaranteed to have both if our function is continuous and we're looking at a closed interval. So a lot of times, though, we're interested in open intervals where the endpoints necessarily aren't included. And so we might have something like the interval from a to b. So if we have an open interval from a to b, closed interval method isn't going to work, so we're definitely not guaranteed to have an absolute max or an absolute min. But if we're going along, our function's continuous, we're looking at an open interval, and we find that we have one critical number on that interval, well, if that critical number is a max, then it's not just the local max, it's the absolute max of our function on that interval. And if we're going along and we test it and we see that it's a min, not only is it the local min, but it's also the absolute min for our function. So if we have an open interval and one critical number on that open interval, then local max implies not only is it the local max, it's the absolute max. And if it were a local min, well then not only is it the local min, it's the absolute min. So we get a little bit more information here if we only have one critical number. All right, so let's see this in action. We're going to try an example. But the kind of the key thing here is this word 1. We're finding one critical number on an interval. Well, I guess there's a couple key things. I keep highlighting things. One critical number, continuous function, and really can be any interval there. So it still would work if it's a closed interval, but we have other methods for dealing with a closed interval. So continuous function, one critical number, our local max is going to be an absolute max. Our local min is going to be an absolute min. All right, so let's get to an example.